Hey guys, this is Dark Gamer 001 back with another podcast. Today we're discussing the issue of Nintendo using region lock in their devices. I've discussed this in previous videos, mainly when region lock was confirmed for the Wii U. So why am I tackling this again? Mainly 3 points. The strong anti-region lock campaign on Miiverse, Nintendo's more recent statements regarding this matter, and an analysis of the arguments that some people are using to defend region lock. But first, let's quickly explain what this region lock is all about. Basically, with this lock in place, let's say for example, you live in Europe, like I do. You got a game from Japan or North America. Want to try it out on your system? Nope, tough luck. Region lock means that you can only play games from your region. So yeah, looks like you won't be able to play that game. Now, there are a number of reasons why most people are against region lock, which were outlined by the Miiverse campaign. For example, if you live in Europe or worse, Australia, game prices are usually much more expensive than, say, North America, so importing the games would give us a possible cheaper option. What about people who emigrate with a region locked handheld or console? We're living in 2013. For the love of RCs, getting a new console for different region or importing all your games should not be your only options. And finally, and possibly the biggest issue, are games that never reach a region. For example, in the GameCube era, Europe never got Baten Kaitos Origins. More recently, we have great Japanese exclusive games like Earthseeker, which I really want to try out, but that never made out of Japan. North America never got games like Disaster Day of Crisis, for example, and had to create Operation Rainfall to get huge games like Xenoblade Chronicles. And eventually Exceed published the other two JRPGs, The Last Story and Pandora's Tower, very late when compared to the European release dates. So obviously by now you've probably figured out that I'm really against region lock. I have absolutely no intention of hiding that bias. But anyway, let's take a look at the more recent statements from Nintendo regarding region lock. We're gonna start off with Satoru Iwata's statement during E3 in Los Angeles. So this was before the recent anti-region lock campaign kicked off. Now, just to make things clear right away, I really have a great amount of respect for Iwata-san. I believe he made a number of decisions that have been of great benefit to Nintendo, but of course, I simply cannot agree with his stance on region lock. So here's what he had to say. This was posted on IGN. From some people's perspective, it might seem like a kind of restriction. However, we hope people can appreciate the fact that we're selling our products worldwide, Iwata told me, acknowledging that Nintendo has historically worked with region-locked systems. There are many different regions around the world, and each region has its own cultural acceptance and legal restrictions, as well as different age ratings. There are always things that we're required to do in each different region, which may go counter to the idea that players around the world want the freedom to play whatever they want. Iwata noted that the strategy behind regional approaches to hardware and content was something not unique to Nintendo, that was something the entire industry had to grapple with and manage. I hope that game fans can understand that the industry isn't doing this solely out of business ego. There are some reasons behind it. Okay, so first of all, Nintendo, we are giving you our money. We do not need to appreciate the fact that you're selling your hardware worldwide. Although to be fair, this might have been a dig at the Xbox One's uncertain release schedule in countries such as Japan, for example. But that's beside the point. What about cultural acceptance, legal restrictions, and age ratings? In terms of cultural acceptance and possible different age ratings, it is not Nintendo's responsibility to police what the audience buys and plays. And I don't know about most people, but personally, I'd be more pissed about spending money on a game I can't play rather than one which presents, I don't know, maybe a different cultural background. More importantly, why are these suddenly a problem, especially on handhelds, which were always region free? The DS Lite was the last region free Nintendo handheld, and I never heard any problems of this sort before. Microsoft and Sony especially don't seem to encounter these problems as well. The obvious question is, why should Nintendo? And continuing with our focus on handhelds, Iwata should explain why these issues suddenly became problematic after the DS Lite. Notice how he refers to region lock as something concerning the industry in general. So this was before the Xbox One made a 180-degree turn on their DRM features, including the removal of region lock. PS4, just like its predecessor, was always going to be region free, meaning that now it is no longer an industry-wide issue. It is now solely a Nintendo issue, and that is what sparked off the massive anti-region lock campaign by the fans. So, as we said, Iwata's statement took place before it became apparent that Nintendo's console will be the only next-gen device with a region lock, and before the recent Miiverse campaign. But we had a more recent statement from Nintendo of America, which said it has no plans to remove region locking from our systems. By taking this approach, Nintendo is able to include parental controls and ensure compliance with regional standards and rating systems. Okay, where do I begin here? I just don't know. Let's start with parental control, shall we? How does this make sense? Oh, hang on, I have a scenario where it might make some sense. As a concerned parent, I need my console to be region lock. Otherwise, my out of control child will import and play those horrible Japanese porn games. I'm sorry that was ridiculous, but really, I mean, come on, Nintendo, please. If anything, include a regional lockout option as a parental control device. Maybe that way the regional chip on the devices will find some use, I don't know. But seriously. As for regional standards and rating systems, again, it's not your freaking job to police your audience. If you've become so obsessed with maintaining your family-friendly image to the point where you're region locking the console for that reason, something is very, very wrong with your logic. Despite all this, there are a number of people trying to defend Nintendo's region lock policy. They have every right to, I guess. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but I'm also entitled to the opinion that most of these guys aren't impacted by region lock and therefore try to dismiss it as a non-issue. That or they are taking fanboyism to a new extreme. Regardless, I'm gonna focus on two of their main arguments here and trying to see what points they're going to come up with. They might have some valid points after all. Let's take a look. So their two main points are, let's start with this one, that region lock impacts a small number of gamers. You know what? I agree. We are a vocal minority, but a minority nonetheless. But if you're claiming to make products for a broad audience, you can't just ignore this group of fans and that group because they're minorities, because ultimately you won't be targeting a broad audience at all with that mentality. Their second argument is that they think that with region-free devices, the incentive to translate and localize games will be lesser. They may have a partial point here, but they are also contradicting themselves. Allow me to explain. In a hypothetical scenario where the last generation Wii was region-free, perhaps the need for fans to join and create Operation Rainfall, which eventually showed Nintendo and publishers Xseed that there was demand for Xenoblade Chronicles The Last Story and Pandora's Tower in North America. Maybe without region lock, the need to localize these titles would have been less, because most people would have imported those games in English from Europe. But what actually happened? A number of people either imported a European Wii and the games, or they hacked their North American Wii to play them, which is just plain sad. Eventually they made it over to this territory, but after a very long wait. So what am I saying here? In regards to games already translated in English, those who defend region lock may have a slight point, although in my opinion even that is quite shaky. But what happens when we're talking about games released in Japan only? You guys are saying that if we had a region-free device, no one would localize because we would just import it? But You just said we're a minority. On top of that, only a small fraction of this minority will import the game in Japanese simply because the language barrier may be too great for them, and it's obviously no joke. And for those that do, it doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't buy the game in their own language as well if it eventually gets localized and translated. In conclusion, I think that Nintendo of America's statement that they have no plans to remove the region lock should not be a deterrent, and we should continue campaigning just like North American gamers continue to campaign even after NOA said they had no plans to localize those JRPGs. Different situation, but possibly the same outcome. And before anyone claims I'm doing this to bash Nintendo, please, I think the 3DS is an amazing device. The Wii U is also a great console that will explode into an amazing one, starting with the more huge releases such as Pikmin 3 and the wonderful 101 coming soon. I'm certainly not trying to paint the Wii U in a bad light in respect to the other next gen consoles, because I can also point to the fact that yes, currently the Wii U is the only region lock device, but it's also the only next gen console with backwards compatibility and free to use internet services. So why am I doing this? Simple. I've been accused of being a Nintendo fanboy. Personally, I don't give a damn what they think about me, but I believe we have to point out both the positive aspects of a company and its shortcomings. In other words, if you truly love a company, you can't just praise everything they do. You can and you should call them out on their own bullshit. But this brings us to the end of this podcast. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments below, regardless of what side you're on in this issue. It's an open forum, so we should encourage constructive arguments, even if we don't necessarily agree with them. I'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button. We also have a Facebook page you can check out. Link is in the description box below. There's also a link to the change.org petition against region lock. If you can fill that in, it only takes a few seconds and you will be doing a great deed for your fellow gamers. Thanks for watching again. Dark Gamer 001 over and out.